Hello, folks, and welcome into the Horns 24/7 game preview episode. Tommy Yarsh here alongside Chip Brown. Chip, one of the biggest games of the season coming up. Texas traveling to Tuscaloosa to take on the Crimson Tide. As you see Chip flexing his massive muscles there, Alabama flexed their muscles in week one with a big win over Middle Tennessee State, looking to do the same on their home turf against the Longhorns. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at this game. Texas making a trip to Tuscaloosa for the first time since 1902. How about that for a long time? Alabama won this game last year in Austin 20-19 in a heartbreaking loss for the Longhorns. And the last time Alabama lost at home was in 2019 to the eventual national champions in the LSU Tigers. So, Chip, no pressure for the Longhorns coming in here in week two to Bryant-Denny Stadium that's going to be sold out and very loud. We talked about this a little bit in the pre-show. This is probably the time where Quinn Ewers and Steve Sarkisian can prove themselves the most. This is their proving ground. They had the chance last year. Quinn Ewers' injury in the first quarter kind of took it away from them, but they have a lot to prove. Steve Sarkisian at Texas, 14-12 as a head coach, 2-7 against ranked opponents, and he's 3-6 on the road. And talk about Quinn Ewers in games that he started and finished for Texas, 7-3, but he's 1-3 against ranked teams. Chip, what do you need to see for them on Saturday that'll make you say, yeah, these guys have finally found their footing?
Well, the great coaches reveal themselves early, usually within the first 3 years. I mean, even Mac Brown went to a Big 12 title game in year two in 1999, didn't win the national championship and his first conference title until year 7. But, he showed early on, went to the Big 12 title game in 2001 as well. So these are the games that can rewrite the script. The knock on Steve Sarkisian is he's not an elite coach. Well, he hasn't been an elite coach. That's not to say he can't, but it is games like this where you get to show the whole country that, you know what, we can take this program to another level. We can go into Bryant-Denny Stadium where they have a 43 game non-conference home winning streak during the regular season. And a 57 game win streak against non-conference opponents in the regular season, with 43 of those coming at home. So it's, a 21 game home winning streak. They haven't lost at home at night since 2015, on and on and on about all the superlatives regarding Alabama. But the bottom line is, if you did talent for talent, roster from Alabama's 2022 team to the 2023 team, you would say the 2022 team was more talented with Bryce Young and Will Anderson and on and on. So, this is a great opportunity for Texas to go in, shock the world. They're a 7-point underdog. No one's expecting an assistant of Sarkisian, who are 20, they're 2-28 against him. They're not expecting Steve Sarkisian to go in there and get it done. And that's the best time to show everybody, kind of what Deion Sanders in Colorado did last week. Now you have our attention. Everyone is waiting to see what Colorado's going to do at home against Nebraska this week. Well, that's going to be the same way. If Texas can beat Alabama, then everyone's like, oh, okay. Hold on. All that recruiting Steve Sarkisian's been doing is growing up. It's showing up on the field. He's been aces in the portal. He's adding talent left and right. It's showing. And that's what Steve Sarkisian, that's what Quinn Ewers want the conversation to be after this game. And Quinn Ewers, number 1 rated recruit in the country, coming out of South Lake Carroll. It's time. Look, redshirt freshman Johnny Manziel won a Heisman in his redshirt freshman year. I consider this a sophomore year for Quinn Ewers. I don't even count the Ohio State year. He was very much a first-year quarterback last year. He should show big-time growth from year one to year two in Sarkisian's offense. Now, they didn't run anything against Rice. They didn't run any of their motions. They was very vanilla. They ran the basic bread and butter plays that they run. Let's see how sharp they really were paying attention in camp, with a loaded game plan and no pre-snap penalties on offense, and a better performance from the offensive line to protect Quinn Ewers, because those rushing yards are going to be hard to come by. And that's another thing that sort of eats at me, Tommy, is Steve Sarkisian going to stay patient with the run if the results aren't there? I just think back to the TCU game last year. He gave up on the run, 22 carries. TCU stuck with the run, even though they weren't making anything, and then boom, they broke one. And in a 17-10 game, that made a huge difference. And Texas is going to have to continue to try to run the ball to affect play action and to keep Alabama from just loading up and coming after, Quinn Ewers. So it's a fascinating chess match. We know Steve Sarkisian spent 2 years practicing against Nick Saban at Alabama in 2019 and 2020. We know that, Sark knows exactly what drives Saban's defense crazy. Saban knows what Sark likes to do. So great chess match. The home field advantage is every bit of 3 points this week. So let's see if Steve Sarkisian and Quinn Ewers are ready to show everybody that they're elite.
Like you mentioned, Nick Saban's assistants against him as head coaches, 28-2. Steve Sarkisian, though, made a good point during halftime of LSU and Florida State on Sunday night and said, well, what's their record? What's regular coaches' record against him?
Yeah.
I don't think it's all too much different. You mentioned the run game for Texas, and I think if the run game wants to succeed, you're going to need to see some change in the style of play on the offensive line. Maybe not style of play, but just better play overall. That group as a cohesive unit was just bad against Rice. They gave up 2 sacks, 7 tackles for loss against a defense that last year was 111th in FBS and sacks per game. So as you told us earlier today over on the horns247.com board, Cole Hudson will be getting the start at right guard, replacing DJ Campbell. That interior of this offensive line really seems like it's going to be a point of emphasis for this Alabama defense. We know that Kevin Steele's defenses love to blitz their linebackers, and that's something they showed last week against Middle Tennessee State. Chip, is this turnaround going to be good enough? Can this Texas offensive line become what they need to be this fast heading into Saturday's perennial matchup?
Well, this is going to decide the game. I mean, the interior of Texas's offensive line has to improve exponentially over the performance they turned in against Rice. And look, I've talked to people who were familiar with the Rice game plan. They loaded it up with every stunt, you could imagine, stuff they had never shown. So it was new, but that doesn't excuse anything. First games are tricky. Obviously, teams have all summer to put new stuff in. And Steve Sarkisian, we know, has put in new stuff offensively. Once he said that, once Paul Christ arrived, they wanted to add some new things in at fall camp. What is alarming is they got no push. Like, never during the Rice game did we see offensive linemen on the second level. Running backs didn't have room to run. They were having to bounce things outside against Rice. So, I've talked to my man Dan Neal, former All-American offensive lineman, 2-time Super Bowl winner with the Denver Broncos, and said, "Are you alarmed?" He said, it wasn't pretty, but he said that they can get that fixed. And he said, look, Alabama's going to command your attention in a way that Rice doesn't. It's just human nature. But Texas fans don't want to hear that because they've they're well aware of the issues that have been going on with the interior of the offensive line. Last year, you had Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson to make guys miss and make something out of nothing. We don't know what we have yet in CJ Baxter and Jonathan Brooks and Jaden Blue. And we know Keelan Robinson can turn it up. But this is going to decide the game, Tommy, because I think the Texas defense is going to keep Texas in this game into the fourth quarter. And then it's a matter of, can that offensive line find any daylight in the running game, and can that interior of the offensive line, because we know Sark will max protect. He did that last year against Alabama, but max protection doesn't solve what has to happen on the interior of that defensive line, or interior of the offensive line, and that to me is going to decide this game, because if it comes down to which offense can go get the points when they absolutely have to have them, then this Texas offensive line is going to have to protect Quinn Ewers.
I absolutely agree with you there. If there was a bright spot, though, from last Saturday against Rice, it was no doubt the Texas defense. They did an extremely good job of limiting the Owls on the ground. I think 24 carries for a grand total of 27 yards. And they played well against Alabama a season ago. They kept this a 1-point game against what ended up being the number 4 total offense in the country when the season was all said and done. The front seven, I think, and it's no secret, is going to have to be huge in this one. Jalen Milroe coming in at quarterback for Alabama, a true dual threat guy. He's built like a linebacker. He can beat you with his arm. Still a little bit of accuracy question marks, I think, from a season ago. But really his legs, I think, are such a big strong suit for him. He topped out at 22 miles an hour last year in the Arkansas game, and that speed is going to be hard to handle. Chip, how important is it for Texas to have another strong defensive showing and, more importantly, be able to contain Jalen Milroe?
Yeah, I mean, Texas fans, you talk about a measuring stick game. The last time Texas went into hostile SEC territory was in 2021 with a quarterback very similar to Jalen Milroe and KJ Jefferson. Jefferson, ran just enough to convert third downs, keep the chains moving, convert third and fourth and short. And it broke the will finally of that Texas defense, and Arkansas ended up running for 333 yards in a 40-21 rout. Let's see how far this Texas defense has come. I like the personnel. You've got, Jalen Ford wasn't on the field against Arkansas. He's now the preseason Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. Jalen Catalon was on the field for Arkansas and is now on the field for Texas, and it was an all SEC performer, at Arkansas. So this is a defense that I think is ready for prime time. In fact, I think Ethan Burke and his long arms, I think he knocks the ball loose from Jalen Milroe and does it early. And, there's nothing worse than being the home team when things are going wrong and the crowd is quiet and that quarterback starts to feel it. Now, we don't know. Jalen Milroe could be Shedeur Sanders, and he may just be getting warmed up. But you have to put doubt in that young man's mind, and you have to do it early in this game because he's clearly a competitor, a big-time competitor. Reminds me a lot of Jalen Hurts in the way that he, just makes things happen. So this is a big challenge, but the Texas defense was able to contain mobile quarterbacks last year, whether it was, Max Duggan or Spencer Sanders or Jalen Daniels, Adrian Martinez. None of those guys really got Texas. And so, you had Gary Patterson helping with the game plan, of course, but I just think Pete Kwiatkowski knows what he's got, knows his personnel. And it all starts with number 93, Tavondre Sweat, and number 90, Byron Murphy. And those guys sound like they're hungry and ready to go.
They were absolutely ready to go last week against Rice. I would say probably the two best players that Texas trotted out on the field against Rice there in week 1. All right, Chip, the part that everybody's waiting for, Game predictions, score prediction. You go first.
Okay, so I'm not going to be a prisoner of the moment. I said before the season Texas would beat Alabama because I felt like they're catching Bama at the right time, trying to figure things out on offense. Bama didn't run the ball particularly well themselves last week. Not as well as they probably thought they were going to run it with guys like Jace McClellan and, Roydell Williams and Justice Haynes. So I think that Texas makes a big play defensively early in this game and gets a turnover, and they're kind of hanging around and right there, kind of like last year's game where, Texas is punishing Alabama's mistakes and they take advantage of that. And the Texas defense keeps them in it. And Bird Auburn with the late field goal. Texas 24, Alabama 23.
All right, so another 1-point victory. This time the Longhorns coming out on top in Mr. Brown's predictions. Chip,
I could be dead wrong and will be roasting me like Texas barbecue this time next week.
Well, hey, you know what? That's all right. We're all going to get roasted at some point in our careers. I predicted in my preseason schedule prediction that Texas would lose this game. Kind of wanted to wait and see what would happen in week one. I watched some film on both teams, and I don't really feel confident enough to change my pick at this point in time. I really am high on Jalen Miller. I think he's going to be a great player. Covered him in high school and thought the same there. And now at Alabama, he's showing me a lot of what he did over at Katy Tompkins. So I think that Alabama still has the edge in this game. I do think, though, this is a very defensive-oriented game, kind of like it was last year. Not a lot of points being scored, very disciplined, no turnovers each way a season ago. Alabama, 15 penalties last year. I don't think Nick Saban is going to have the patience to let them do that again, especially on their home turf. So once again, I think close matchup here, but I think Alabama pulls out the win 21-17 over Texas. So score predictions are in. Chip, I'll let you go with any final thoughts as we head into Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to see a team that we've been hearing about all offseason. The super connection, the ability to lead. They are going to face adversity in this game, and you find out what your team's leadership is really all about once you hit adversity. And so let's see if all those Culture Wednesdays and all of that have prepared this team to go in and put on a performance that will be remembered for years to come. This is the kind of game that has that ability. People still talk about the Texas-Alabama game involving Tommy Nobis and Joe Namath from the 1964 season, where Nobis stoned Namath at the goal line. And then, Alabama fans thought Namath was in, and allegedly they asked the referee, how short was Namath from the goal line? And the ref did that. He was that short of the goal line. But they still talk about it. I mean, I'm still telling you that story. They talk about the 2009 national championship game where Colt McCoy got knocked out. So the last time they went to Tuscaloosa was 1902. We know they're going to be going there a whole lot more, starting with the 20, when they enter the SEC next year. But let's see if they can put on a performance that will be talked about the way that the Texas-Ohio State game is still talked about, from the 2005 season.
Texas heading to Tuscaloosa this Saturday for a 6 p.m. Central Time kickoff against the Crimson Tide. Longhorns ranked number 11th, Alabama number 3 team in the country. Going to be a good one, no doubt about it. Thanks for joining us here on the Horns 24/7 game preview. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications as well so you're the first to know when new content heads your way. For Chip Brown, I'm Tommy Yars. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.